computational power. It used to be very expensive. Now it's very, very cheap. And AI is the ultimate example of computational power, the ability to use more power that computers have to do things, right? And we'll talk about in a minute what those things are. Okay, my computer is not working very well today. So it's important to challenge the idea that AI is a thinking machine. AI doesn't think. It doesn't have the thinking power. Sometimes it seems that it has, but it doesn't. Current AI advances are effectively just simply scaling up of computational power. And this is why you see people saying we need to build big data centers with a lot of computers because they need more and more and more and more computational power. Okay. Hopefully that is clear. So let's talk about AI as computational power rather than thinking. So what is it? First of all, computational power is not intelligence. They're two very different things. Again, intelligence requires conscience, experience, and AI does not have that. Again, this is not a criticism of AI. I'm just telling you what it is and what it is not. Okay? Also, most importantly, it's not a new thing. Computational power in the way that AI works, which is machine learning, machines that eventually learn behavior, and what are known as LLMs, do you know what an LLM is? Large language models, you know that? Or language learning models, some people say. Effectively, it's like a language. You give a lot of computational power, a lot of information, and eventually the machine learns how to use that information. And the way it learns is through using it. This is not new. This has been around for a very long time. The very first experiments of this, they were trying to use computational power to play games, for instance. They started with chess. And then they move to more complicated games. But the idea is always the same. You throw more computational power, more power to the machine learns faster, and eventually can play a game, win a game, even against the best humans in the world. But it is not intelligence. So the way in which we value AI has to be measured in usefulness. How useful is it? Not in terms of some utopian, utopia? Some utopian promises. Oh, AI is coming, it's going to bring us all this wonderful new world. It's not. Okay, that's not, and it's unfair to ask AI to bring you utopia. That's not what it's designed for. But it is fair to ask, is it useful? What is it useful for? And what it is not. And it is talked about as something new for marketing purposes. You're not going to want to buy something which is a little bit better than the one before. You want to buy something that is new, right? But it's not new. It has been around for a very long time. And in fact, it has been around in cinema and film production for quite some time. Only it was not called artificial intelligence. So what does it do? And what does it not do? If I'm going to give you something important today, this is possibly the key to understanding both the potential of AI and both the risks of using AI. And you, as students, like my students in the UK, there's a great debate now about should you use AI, should you not use AI. Some people hate it, some people love it, some people use it, some people cheat, etc., etc. That's okay. But let me tell you, perhaps the best reason why you should be careful when you use AI. Okay, what is optimization? When we talk about optimization, what is it? It's when you do things faster and cheaper, So you lower the cost of something. For instance, I don't know, the production of a clicker right, for my presentation. If you can make it faster and cheaper, the price is lower, and more than likely what it means is that more people will be able to buy it, and in technical terms, the economists would tell you that will generate more jobs. Because if you want more of these, then I need more people to make more of these, right? You understand this? This is the idea of an optimization engine. Innovation has an opposite logic to optimization. Innovation is slow, usually very slow. It fails often. This is why it's slow. You try, you fail. You try again, you fail. You try again, you fail. It is costly because of this. Costs a lot of money. And it is uncertain. You don't know really what's going to happen at the end of the process. And actually, the example, very good example, is academic research. The research that academics do. It takes time. It takes a lot of money. And very often, you don't know what's going to come out at the end. Maybe there's going to be something. But innovation requires exactly the opposite direction than optimization. But this I just said basically. Okay, in the film cultural sectors in general, this is very important because optimization does not equal artistic innovation. So if you're thinking about AI as innovation or a tool for innovation, you are misunderstanding what AI is. AI is a tool for optimization, not innovation. Which means that it's very important at what point in the process you start using it. If you, for instance, let me use an example for you as students. Imagine, well, you probably write essays, right? Or exam, okay. So you have a choice. If you go to ChatGPT or some other AI tool, you can say, this is the question, write me an essay. At that point, you are misunderstanding what AI is, and you think that AI will actually do the ideation, which is the innovation of the process. But AI can't do that for you. AI will narrow immediately your options, because AI, this is very important, doesn't like failing. Have you ever asked AI a question and AI told you, well, I don't know? Has this ever happened to you? No.
Yeah.
Has it happened?
Yeah.
In what? Tell me, give me an example.
Well, like in the first time we used it, it was like, I don't have the answer for this question now, but I am going to like investigate and improve myself so I can answer this question.
But what was the question?
Well, I don't remember, but it happened to me a few times.
Yes, but if you ask a question that can be answered, it will answer it.
Yeah.
The issue is it doesn't think maybe I shouldn't give you this answer. It just will give you an answer because it wants to please you. That's how it's designed to please you. In many ways, it's designed like a drug, like a mechanism, a drug delivery mechanism. It wants to give you that happy moment, right? This is the question of the essay, give me the question. Does it mean that you shouldn't use it? No, because if you, at the beginning, use your head to start having an idea, then the following process is one of optimization. You want that idea to work fast, get you to where you want to get. So using AI may be a good idea, but not at the beginning, because it will not innovate. And most importantly, it will simply go back to using examples that are already out there. So by definition, it cannot innovate. Okay. So, and let me give you a very good example, also a very scary example. Can you see the screen? Do you want us to switch off one light? We'll switch off a set of lights, okay, so you can see it better. There you go. Oh, there you go. Better. Well done. An applause, please, for Dr. Fonseca. Very good, very good, very good. This is why, this is why academics are very important. We can switch off a light. Okay, so you are young and you were not alive in the 1990s. But in the 1990s, computers, like the one that I'm using now, were new, right? Laptops particularly were new. You could have your personal computer. In fact, that's what it was called, personal computer, right? Your own computer. And all computer manufacturers said exactly the things that people are saying now about AI. They said AI will revolutionize your work. AI will change all you do, and computers will change and revolutionize your world. They will revolutionize the way you do things. And in particular, at that time, the world had one fundamental problem in terms of economics. Productivity was very, very low. So all countries were asking the same question: how do we increase productivity? And computers said, don't worry, the computer manufacturer said, computers will do that. And then the internet promised the same thing. But here's what happened. There was a promise, an expectation of massive productivity growth. In reality, productivity rates did not increase and in fact decreased. Now, I'm not suggesting that computers are the cause of the decrease, but computers did not do what they were promising to do. Because fundamentally, people were asking computers to do something that they were not created to do. This is called, if my computer works, this phenomenon is called the productivity paradox. And the productivity paradox basically means there is a mismatch. I don't know if you understand the word. What's a good Spanish word for mismatch? Okay, did you hear that? Okay. No, they didn't hear. Use the microphone. Okay. So a mismatch between expectations and results, right? That's not my term, productivity paradox. There is actually a paradox in theory that is described that way. Okay. So AI should be framed, should be understood as a repetition of debates about computation, which has already happened before, and not as a radical new development. Okay, so I hope this is clear, the way in which I framed it. Good. Excellent. So we can go on and begin to be a little bit more specific. All right, first of all, one of the myths that are used to sell AI to you, particularly young people, is that it will lead to democratization. You understand this word, yes, I think. And in particular, what it means is, or what people think it means in this context, is that it will make it easier for people to do certain things that right now they cannot do, so become more available to everybody and not just to rich people or influential people. Oh, I don't know why that image has disappeared, but never mind. All right, let's talk about the hope versus the reality. The hope is that the promise is lower cost, which means that new entrants, in other words, new people can enter the industry. So the idea is that AI will help you make things more cheaply. And remember, this is optimization, not innovation. But anyway, AI will make you make things more cheaply, and therefore more of you will be able to, for instance, make a movie, and therefore enter the film industry. The reality is that economies of scale, and I'll explain in a minute what that means, funnel profits to existing capital holders. That's a complicated sentence. Let me explain what that means. It means that the reality of how economies works around the world is that those that are already big can always pull resources towards them. It's like a black hole that constantly pulls light towards it. You are still going to be too small to have an impact. Yes, it may be true that you can do things more cheaply, But no, it is not true that that will make it easier for you to enter the industry, because the larger players will always be able to pool resources. Funnel is like, I don't know what this. Okay. It's in imbuto in Italian, so I should have done it in Italian. What are the risks? The risks are very simply that concentration of power in few hands. Those who own the models, the language learning models, they win, right? This is not new. It's not that AI is generating something different from the past. It has always been in capitalist societies around the world that those who own the means of production win. It's as simple as that. Tragic as it may be. Not only that, there is also other additional serious risks involved that you may not be aware as you're using AI. AI is trained fundamentally on English language material. The vast majority of AI language learning models are trained. You know what trained means in this sense? They are trained on English language material. It says, but I can use it in Spanish. Yes, you can use it in Spanish because it can translate from English. But it translates from English. It doesn't start from Spanish. Not only that, there are all kinds of cultural biases. As you probably know, I asked my AI tool to create an image for my project, which is cinema and social isolation. And I gave him the prompt, and I said I wanted 4 young people in front of a cinema. And guess what skin color was the 4 people? They all were white, right? And it was only when I said, no, that's not diverse enough. And then it started. But actually, it was funny. It was like white people colored, right? They didn't look like, it was like somebody put some color on those people just to make them look a little different. Let's continue this. And without supportive regulation, AI simply make bad things worse. Because again, remember, it's not intelligent. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't think. So it will just replicate, and spout out exactly the same stuff that we do, which is usually not very good. Okay. Oh, now it's going to become, your sister would like this because this is the economic part. Okay. Let me now give you another way to understand the world, really, and particularly film. This, so CAGR, C-A-G-R, means compound annual growth rate, and the translation in Spanish is that. That is a measure of the quality of investment. In other words, how much a company or a sector is growing, right? Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but the film industry, that's over the past 25 years. The blue line at the bottom is the film industry. The orange line is cloud computing, and the green line is biotechnology. That's the speed at which they are growing. The film industry grows at this is global, not American, this is global. It grows at about 6%, okay? The cloud computing and biotechnology sectors grow at over 20%. Now, it is understood widely by all economists that if you are growing at less than 15%, it favors very strongly existing large players and makes it very difficult for small players and companies to enter the market. Or in other words, AI in this particular context is not going to make much of an impact on a sector which is not really open to new entrants, to you. It might, on the other hand, have an impact in those other sectors where, in fact, if you look at biotechnology, a lot of startups, a lot of new companies emerge every year. And by the way, there is a calculation that roughly 90% of startups fail within a couple of years. 90, that's 90% of startups. So the system is already rigged, I don't know what the word is in Spanish, and the film industry is in a position where it's doing okay, but it's doing okay for very few people, for the large studios. The smaller players have only crumbs. If you want to be a small player, get into biotechnology or cloud computing, I'm sorry to say, right? All right. You want to say, okay, so but who's going to be impacted most? I'm afraid you can't see that very well. I'm sure I can't see it very well. Okay, I'll explain in a moment. So let's think about economies of scale. Larger firms can absorb costs better in tighter margin environment, right? I just explained to you, when the growth is small, it means that the margins that you have are very, very low. So for instance, you spend $10 and you make 11. So the margins are very, very, very small. Large firms, big firms, can move those small percentages and margins to where they're needed more easily than smaller ones. Because smaller ones may need that 1% to survive. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, access to capital. Yesterday I showed a figure of how many people are without a bank account in different parts of the world. Costa Rica, by the way, is around 25%. Low banking or no banking. 1 in 4 people in your country has no access to capital. And that figure goes increasingly higher in countries which are younger or lower affluence, et cetera, et cetera. In Africa, in fact, that figure goes up to 60% of people. In mature markets, in rich markets, like in Europe or in some countries in Asia, like Korea, South Korea, Japan, and of course the United States, that figure is tiny. Only 10%, 9% of people don't have access to capital. Investors, those with money, always prefers safer places to put their money. So you have now, you see how it begin to, a combination of factors begin to be against you from the beginning, from before you even move. There's also brand and IP leverage. This is market speak. Larger players extract more value from existing assets. In other words, larger players already have materials like IP, and they can always extract value from those assets. So when people say that AI will, it's going to make everything available to you, it's going to democratize things, I'm not entirely sure what utopia they're thinking about exactly, because all the data that shows that the opposite is true. AI, in fact, is poised, in other words, is ready to amplify existing inequalities. It's not going to democratize the world. Smaller countries will probably become less advantaged, not more advantaged. So in terms of filmmakers, larger studios benefit most from the advanced tools and distributions that AI will provide. Smaller producers may see creative gains, but face continual higher barriers in access or employment stability. Now, that map that you see there, I don't know that you can see it at all, because, again, I can't see it. But I'm going to move there for a second and tell you a little bit. Can you see the red? The red is 5, which is the maximum effect. The AI, this is the forecast the AI will have. So access to AI tools, the people who will benefit the most or will have the access is high budget studios, because they have the money to create, in fact, their own language learning models on their own material. It's going to have a low impact on mid-budget productions and a slightly higher one on low-budget productions, because they can access available open formats like ChatGPT and so on, and before they couldn't. So of these three groups, large studios benefit the most. Employment effects. Which of these categories are going to impact it more by AI? Negatively. This is a negative figure. Studios are going to be impacted negatively because they're going to be getting rid of people, and by the way, particularly young people, entry-level jobs. But the sector, the area which is going to be impacted most is mid-budget productions, which are already in trouble as they are right now. Creative flexibility, this is where the little person wins, right? Because of course, AI is a creative tool that will give you flexibility that you don't have without. So that's good news, but that's where the good news pretty much ends. And it's nice to have the creative flexibility, but again, I'm assuming you want to pay the bills and earn some money with your creativity, and that's where the problem begins and ends. And in terms of distribution, this is perhaps the most important one because of what I'm going to say in a minute. Studios are not going to be impacted by AI. Studios are going to be fine as they are. But mid-budget productions and low-budget productions are going to be impacted very severely by AI. And this one here is where most of the misunderstandings are. Because what's the point of you making things if you can't distribute that thing out in the public? And the means of distributions are firmly in the hands of studios and will continue to be. I know this sounds like a very negative, and it's going to get worse. All right, so let's talk about AI content saturation and inflation for a moment. So first of all, AI itself is saturated already. I don't know if you know, there's a term which is used in computer science. By the way, I should have said this maybe at the beginning. My university, together with two other universities in the UK, is the Centre for Sustainable AI for the UK. So we inform the UK government on AI development. Not me, obviously, the computer science people. And I've talked to a lot of them about things, particularly this thing here. And also I worked with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is the Oscars people, on a program on AI that we did for the filmmakers in LA 2 years ago. This notion, model collapse, is very important. AI, basically what happens is that AI needs constant feeding of new material. But there isn't enough new material. At some point, the material that we humans generate, it will end. The AI will have gone through all the material. And it will start, it will not know that it has, and it will continue feeding itself, but on its own material. Because AI doesn't know if it's reading AI-generated material. It will just read things and begin to believe effectively its own stuff, which could be completely wrong. Again, computer science, bless you, computer science people say this is called model collapse, when the language learning model collapses on itself. There is a not very nice example, metaphor, forgive me, but it's like vomiting and eating your own vomit. I'm sorry about this, right? But the computer science is called this rubbish in, rubbish out, right? So if you input rubbish, you get rubbish out. And that, if you imagine constant rubbish in, rubbish out, the moment comes when effectively there's so much rubbish out there that it's impossible to detect where the good stuff really still is. And because of this, then truth becomes almost irrelevant because misinformation expands exponentially for obvious reasons. And again, this is not because somebody's behind AI and is trying to do this. This is because the consequence, and people run and run and run ahead without thinking. And there's now a term in English called AI slop. Have you ever heard this term? Yes, see some of the young people there have. Very good. Yes. So, you know what AI slop is. There is a lot of repetitive stuff that is out there that is not good for anything really, but it's out there. And it is considered now that something like 75% of content on the internet, 75%, not just that 7%, 75% contains AI content. And although quite how much of that is entirely AI is debated, so it's not entirely clear at the moment. But this problem is becoming a problem even for people like YouTube. Google is trying actively now to stop AI slop. And they want people to stop using AI just to replicate constantly material. To give you an example is, the music, the lo-fi channels, the music to study, 3 hours of music, right?
Yeah.
And that's done by pressing a couple of computers and doing a prompt. And then it's put out on the internet. And some of these become successful, so people keep doing it, keep doing it. And you can do 100 of this, 200 of this, 300 of this a day. And constant output, which of course is not good even for the platform itself for a number of reasons. So AI slop is creating this horrible mass of material, and there is a serious problem then that is very difficult then to tell what's really genuine from what is not. And this has an impact on film culture as well, because, and this is something I've discussed with film people endlessly, film marketing right now is drowned in AI-generated promotional the slop. You go online and find, I don't know, let me find an example. The new Avengers movie is coming out a year and a half from now. But if you go online, you will find 100 trailers for the film. But there isn't a trailer for the film. So these are all user-generated trailers. Now you could say, well, but it's fun. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not fun to do those. But at some point, it will become impossible to detect but which is the real trailer. Which one is the real thing? Because you could say, oh, but it says Disney or whatever. But that's not how we consume material. The algorithm will start pushing stuff to us. And we don't know it's not real. And suddenly you go, oh, that's the trailer. And you go to the cinema, and the film is completely different from what you thought it was. But the most important damage for you, especially for young people, is in effect that new filmmakers risk becoming invisible. There's just too much noise out there. And this, in many ways, and this is my interpretation of this, by the way, is running the risk of taking us back to a very different time when, if you knew someone important, maybe you had a chance. If you didn't, then you had no chance. If you were rich, maybe you had a chance. But if you weren't, you had no chance. And I think we are heading backwards in that direction. Because if it's impossible to detect talent, then if you know someone, maybe you'll say, hey, can you help me can you introduce me to X, Y, and Z? But if you don't, then who's going to find you in this slop that is out there? Not only that, they promise you, some of you will say, well, but there is digital content, digital studios that do content and then monetize it. But the monetization, I don't have a slide on this, but monetizing, we could talk until tomorrow morning whether it really works or not and who it works for. The idea that you put things on Google and then the adverts go there and then you get some money, et cetera, but that works very badly and only for very few people. Okay. There are also, I don't know what's going on there. There are also So forgive me that. I don't know what's happened, but that was the image, and the image has decided to disappear. That's okay. It's tired. Even the image is tired. Now, obviously, but it's important to say and remind you that there are significant impacts of AI in general terms. So when you're using AI for your essay, for your film, for your visual effects, or when I am using it for, for research or whatever, we need to bear this in mind. AI is not a neutral technology. There are huge environmental costs. Now, there is one estimate, although that estimate itself is debated. Every time you prompt, it's the equivalent of a bottle of water. Okay, so every time you ask any question, should I dump my boyfriend? Or should I do whatever you want to ask, you're using up this much water. The reason for this, in case you're wondering why we know this, is because computers, the data centers that they use, that they need, cannot be air cooled. And you can imagine how much heat there is. They need to be water cooled. There isn't an air cooling system. We have air cooling systems for our computers, right? Because they're small. But for large data centers, fans are not enough. So they need to use water to cool the system. That's why they're using so much water. That's why Elon Musk and company are thinking of putting data centers in space. If you think I'm joking, I'm not. They really are now thinking about using SpaceX to put data centers in space because cooling is not an issue. So they can optimize. You see, it's all, remember this, it's all about optimization, right? Okay. Whoever, by the way, if any one of you can find a water cooling system for large data centers, you're good to go. Okay, you're going to win a Nobel Prize. You're going to do a lot of things because that really is going to save the environment. Oh, I'm not joking. I'm serious. If any one of you could come up with something like that. Political and economic implications. Monopoly of power or oligopoly, in other words, just a few people in charge. This used to be, again, it looks like we're going backwards. This used to be the case in Dickensian time, in another time, in Victorian times, when few people had the means of production and everybody else worked for them in some form or other. And right now, there is only a handful of AI companies that really control the market. Very few. And to make things worse, they are located in effectively 2 countries on Earth, which is, of course, the US and China. The rest of the world it has a very, very small footprint when it comes to AI models. And these have severe political implications. And there is, in effect, a new colonization drive, only that now it's AI that is colonizing rather than soldiers on ships. But in effect, that's what's happening. Job shifts. Oh dear, that's a big one, and we don't have a long time to discuss it, but I'm happy to answer questions if you're worried about jobs, because again, there's a lot of discussion about whether, in fact, AI will follow the same behavioral curve of previous technologies, which displaced some jobs. In other words, some people lost their job, but new jobs were created, and those people then got those jobs. This, in economic terms, is called task encroachment. Encroachment, I don't know the Spanish. Yes, more aggressive than that. So I don't know what the Spanish word is. I'm sorry. Maybe you can find it while we're.
I'll ask ChatGPT.
Ask ChatGPT. So task encroachment means when there is a task that a human can perform, and technology begins to become better and better to the point then it becomes better than the human, and so it can replace the human.
Invasion.
Invasion. Well, there you go. Task invasion. Okay. The argument that people make from the AI companies, and if I had $1 for every time I heard it, I would be rich, they say this to you, which is beautiful, but also a massive lie. You're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who uses AI, right? That's what they say, because they want you to use AI. This is going to be true for a little time, and then, bless you, and then until the AI learns how to do the job better than the human that is using the AI, at which point, why do you need the human? In the optimization, remember, you don't need it anymore, so goodbye. So this process of humans using new jobs being created, if you lose it, there are now serious question marks as to whether it will happen with AI. And a lot of people, economists are divided on this. If you want to read a great book on this topic, it's called A World Without Work. And it's really one of the best books that I've ever read on this topic. It's not dry, don't worry. There's a lot of economics in it, but it's not dry, it's not just for academics. In fact, it's written for people to read and try to understand this. And for young people, you really need to understand job dynamics, because it's your future. And there are also social and ideological impact. This is why I've decided to dedicate the rest of my career, however long it's going to be, to this particular issue. 2 years ago, while I was doing the project with the Academy, a company called Showrunner AI, one of many, by the way, I'm not picking on them, but said we can now produce animated material. They did a test with South Park material. They paid, by the way, the South Park people to do it. And you could say, make me a South Park episode featuring, I don't know, Cartman and whatever. I'm sure you know South Park. And the dog that George Clooney usually voices, which is true. It's George Clooney that does the voice of the dog, or the bark of the dog. Make me an episode and so on. And you go to work and you come back and there's the episode. And eventually it will become faster and faster, and you can do it almost instantaneously. The thing that, however, scared me was the picture of the people on the sofa at home, and say, you can do it from your sofa, from home. And this was immediately after the pandemic, when we had all been forced to be at home. And then I got curious about what are the figures about loneliness and isolation. And I found out, in fact, that the US Surgeon General, which is the highest medical authority in the US, in 2023, the same year, published a great report that's called Our Epidemic of Social Isolation and Loneliness. And he called the epidemic with purpose, and he said, this is the greatest problem that we have right now in our country. And I looked also at global figures, and they're terrible. And the generation that is suffering the most is young people, and particularly young women. In the US, right now, women slightly younger than you, between 15 and 18, 19, 1 in 3 thinks about killing herself, and 1 in 4 makes plans to kill herself. So it's decided how she's going to kill herself. These are not my figures, they're official figures. So I got a bit scared by this idea that you can produce your own content at home, and therefore you're isolated even more. And so that's why I'm working on a project. Hopefully we will work together here with the university and another university in the States and another university in Ghana on how cinema can help address this problem. Because if you go to the cinema, you go out of the house. And that's the most important thing. So a core warning, in other words, an important warning. To frame AI as unique or singular, the singularity thing, is misguided. It must be discussed as a technology embedded in society and not outside of it. When people talk about singularity, they seem to say this is different, and therefore we need to, singularities always remind me of God, right? God-like figures. It's very important that whenever you talk about AI, whether you want to use it or not, and remember, I'm not telling you don't use it, And I'm not telling you it's bad, because it's neither good nor bad. It's computational power. Computational power is a thing. It's how we use it that makes it good or bad. And in fact, there are lots of good uses that you can put it to in filmmaking and other areas. So long as you remember these things which are left in Spanish for you. I don't know whether to translate. This is an AI translation, right? Okay, so this little slide, I gave it a prompt. It made the slide in probably 30 seconds. It saved me time, but I knew what I wanted to say. I told it, this is what I want you to say. I didn't say, make me a slide about, no. I said, I need a slide in Spanish, and this is what I want to say. So we are in an era of content inflation. Growth is low. This is driven partly by AI and the low growth rate that I was telling you. It favors big players, not small ones, like studios, for instance. And saturations makes it very difficult for small independents to be discovered. Okay, so if you want to know the good news, you can ask me now in the Q&A. But the reason why I'm saying all of this is because if you know where the dangers are, you can avoid them. Mm-hmm. If you don't know where the dangers are, you're going to run straight into the wall and bang your head, and then you're like, So if you're aware of the risks and the damages, this is not to scare you off, but just to give you some tools that you can use. And you can say, well, they're saying this to me, but critical thinking, what universities should be about. Okay. All right. So anyway, thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry this was in English. My Spanish is not very good, although I understand it. But that's